SEC quarterback injury updates. We've got the latest from Austin Simmons to Lenoris Sellers to Garrett Nussmeier. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege, and get $20 off your first purchase. All right, we got plenty we're going to get into today. Our buddy Jay Smith from Locked On Sooners is going to join us to get an early preview of Oklahoma versus Auburn. But we got to start with the latest news going on around the conference. And first off, we will start over in South Carolina. Shane Beamer saying he is optimistic that Lenoris Sellers will be able to play against Mizzou in week 4, telling reporters that optimism is there. He said, I don't get into specific injuries, so we shall see. But a big Saturday night SEC showdown at number 23, Mizzou. The first SEC availability report of the week will be released Wednesday night, so keep an eye out for Lenoris Sellers' status for week 4. Mizzou riding high at 3-0, heading into their opener. Ahmad Hardy going off last week in the run game. Bo Perbula playing well, but no offense to Luke Doty, I just don't think South Carolina has a chance with Luke Doty a quarterback. Could be wrong, could prove us wrong, but obviously Lenoris Sellers, a preseason Heisman candidate, he gives them the best chance. So here's hoping for South Carolina's sake, we get Lenoris Sellers back by this weekend. Meanwhile, over at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin giving an update on his injured quarterback in Austin Simmons. He was a game-time decision against Arkansas this past week, dealing with a lingering ankle injury. They ended up going with Trinidad Chambliss at quarterback. Now, at one point when Trinidad got hurt, Austin Simmons did come in for a little bit, but Ole Miss insider Zach Moreth asking Lane Kiffin for an update on Monday. Kiffin said he anticipates, quote, unquote, Simmons will be the starter for the Rebels under center this weekend. So anticipates Simmons starting this weekend. They do have a big one against Tulane, who was really, really good in terms of a group of 5 team. And John Summerall's done a nice job there. They're undefeated. So big game for Ole Miss against a very talented Green Wave team from Tulane. Meanwhile, over at LSU, Brian Kelly revealing that his quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, has been playing through an injury. At his presser on Monday, Brian Kelly saying Nuss has been playing through a torso injury for the first few weeks of the season and won't be able to begin recovery until they get to their bye week. Kelly saying he can't shut it down to recover until we get it to the bye week. He's getting better. We have to let him get the ball to the playmakers and keep him healthy. Now, Kelly also joined Paul Feinbaum Monday afternoon. He was pressed about Nussmeier's injury. He said it's really a minor injury, but it's one we've had to manage. It's like anything else. If you're not getting your throws in, if you're able to do that on a consistent basis, then there's something you're going to be careful with. He's going to be fine. The bye week will get him over the hump. He's made progress, and he's feeling much better. We can expect him to continue to improve. Now, LSU schedule, they play Southeastern Louisiana this weekend. Should not be a problem. Then they're at Ole Miss. Then it's a bye week. Then they get South Carolina at home. So they're going to have to get through this at Ole Miss game. Now, some people brought up, it's Southeastern Louisiana. Couldn't you just bench him or sit him this week and start Michael Van Buren? But does not sound like LSU wants to consider that. So Nussmeier is going to continue to play through this. Now, there was some, I guess, encouraging news on their injured linebacker, West Weeks. Brian Kelly saying that West Weeks has a calf strain and it is, quote, not a long-term situation. So BK saying that update, much better news than what they initially feared. Meanwhile, over at Texas, Steve Sarkisian speaking with the media on Monday and was asked about his running backs. He said running back C.J. Baxter's hamstring injury is bad enough that he will not play in the Longhorns' final non-conference game against Sam Houston State this Saturday. He is not ready to, quote, rule Baxter out for the SEC opener on October 4th against Florida, especially with a bye week coming in between. But he said, quote, We don't think it's overly significant, but he will be out this week as a precaution. Hopefully get him ready for SEC play. Now, Trey Wisner also been out with a leg injury. The run game relying on some younger guys. James Simon, a true freshman. He led the team in rushing in the win over UTEP last week. Christian Clark and Jarrett Gibson probably going to get their fair share of carries as well. So something to keep an eye on there. We thought that backfield with C.J. Baxter and Trey Wisner was going to be one of the best in the SEC, but they just have not had those guys fully healthy together yet this season. One other note on the Longhorns, quarterback Arch Manning, who has kind of struggled here through his last couple of games, reportedly met with Steve Sarkisian on Sunday to have an in-depth and honest conversation about Saturday's game. Steve Sarkisian telling the media asked about the booing, fans booing Arch going into halftime. He said, if they were booing about the way we were playing, just imagine how we were feeling about the way we were playing at some of that juncture in the first half. So understandable, but don't give up on us too quick. I think we got a pretty good team. Sark said he thinks the adversity is what Manning needs to come out stronger at the end of this. He said, quote, I love the end of the movie for him when he gets on the other side of this. Meanwhile, over at Tennessee, some injury updates from Josh Heupel. Team going to be back in action against UAB on Saturday after their heartbreaking loss to Georgia in overtime. Heupel was asked about some of the injuries, particularly on the defensive line. He said Jackson Moy day-to-day, and David Hobbs continues to do a really good job in his rehab. How fast that progresses here, I can't answer that here today. With this being a non-conference game, won't get any formal availability on injury reports for the Vols, but Jackson Moy missed the game against Georgia. Really could have used him. But Tennessee UAB kickoff 12:45 Eastern on Saturday. Meanwhile, over at the University of Florida, Billy Napier talking with the media and maintaining his confidence in his Florida team. He said, quote, if I didn't feel good about the intangibles of the team, that's when I would probably be worried. Napier said he remains confident in his approach. Quote, we're close to being pretty dangerous, in my opinion. Florida is 1-2 and taking on a top 10 Miami Hurricanes team this Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern on ABC. They got a lot to clean up, the Florida Gators, and this thing could go sideways very quickly if they don't get their stuff together. Meanwhile, SEC honors for Week 3, Gunnar Stockton being named the SEC Offensive Player of the Week for his performance in the win over Tennessee. Defensively, Deshaun Spears, LSU defensive back, and Bray Hubbard for Alabama, both named co-defensive players of the week. Special teams, it was Peyton Woodring, the kicker for Georgia. Offensive lineman of the week was Diego Pounds from Ole Miss and Jordan White from Vandy. Defensive lineman was Albert Regis over at Texas A&M. And your freshman of the week, Torrey Blaylock, running back for Oklahoma. And lastly, some game times announced for next week, Week 5. Remember, it always comes out a week in advance. Kind of knew some of these, you knew the windows, but you'll get Notre Dame at Arkansas. That'll be 11 a.m. Central on ABC. You'll get Utah State at Vanderbilt at 11:45 Central on SEC Network. In the afternoon slate, two big ones. Auburn at A&M, 2:30 Central on ESPN. And LSU at Ole Miss, 2:30 Central on ABC. I hate that those two games are opposite one another. Then you'll get Tennessee at Mississippi State. That'll be 3:15 on SEC Network. So, man, I have to have the three TVs going there. In the nightcap, you'll have UMass at Mizzou, 6:30 Central. That'll be on ESPNU. You'll have Kentucky at South Carolina. That'll be 6:45 Central on SEC Network. And in the ABC primetime spot, it is Alabama at Georgia, 6:30 Central. That is going to be a massive one. So those are your game times for next week. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we're going to get into some early Oklahoma-Auburn conversation with our buddy Jay Smith. That is coming your way here in just a second. Hey, but first, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. And with football in full swing, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you could turn your takes into real prizes all in under 60 seconds. You're going to love checking your projections like Josh Allen for more or less than 270 passing yards, or Saquon Barkley for more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. The best part is, even if one of your picks misses, Prize Picks, they have the flex play, so you could still double your money. You want to go download the Prize Picks app right now and use our code LOCKEDONCollege. That will get you $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. It is Prize Picks, and of course, it is always good to be right. Roll along here, Locked On SEC, and one of the biggest games this weekend. It is Oklahoma hosting number 22 Auburn, 2:30 Central on Saturday afternoon on ABC. It is one of the biggest games of the weekend. SEC Nation will be there. Join us to give us the Oklahoma perspective is our buddy Jay Smith, co-host of Locked On Sooners. And Jay, welcome in, man. What's the vibe around this Oklahoma team 3 weeks in?
Gordy, thanks for having me. Honestly, the biggest vibe around Oklahoma is everyone thinks the defense is legitimate. So this is the thing that Brent Venables has been building for. And so I kind of want to, let me give a little bit of historical context for some people. When Brent Venables was hired in 2022, one of the big reasons why they went that direction is because they wanted a guy that would be able to instill some defense in a conference that's known for playing defense. If you want to win games in the SEC, you need defense. And so Brent Venables was hired. First couple of years, things were kind of meh over there with the Big 12. We finished 10-3. Then last season, coming in the SEC, everyone believed that Oklahoma didn't have the horses to compete in conference. On the offensive side, that's true because everybody was hurt. But on defense, we actually had a really good defense that caused problems. I mean, granted, we held Alabama to no touchdowns in a game that people are still surprised about. Coming into this year, the expectation was the defense may take us a little bit of a step back because Danny Stutzman is gone and Billy Bowman's gone, so some of your bigger pieces. But for a lot of people inside of the Switzer Center, the expectation was the defense was supposed to be better. So far, it's kind of, they're cashing those checks right now with the way the defense is playing compared to other SEC rivals, especially the Michigan game. So vibes are high. And we got a quarterback, which we'll talk about in a minute. But for the most part, the way this defense is playing, everybody's excited.
It's interesting because I was diving into some of the defensive metrics, and it looks like Oklahoma and LSU are right up there in terms of, two of the best defenses in the SEC this year. But not all schedules are created equal. So, is it fair to also say Illinois State, Temple, and Michigan with a true freshman starting quarterback that this defense hasn't really, truly been tested yet?
No, I could totally agree with that in a way. But the one thing I like to look at, too, is how do those teams perform when they're not playing Oklahoma? So Michigan was averaging roughly about 48 points per game outside of the Oklahoma game. Temple, roughly in the 47, 48 point per game, 500 yard per game setup. Illinois State right now is 42, 43 points per game in conference, roughly in the 400 or 500 yard games per game. None of them could do that against Oklahoma. And to me, that kind of confirmed things for me, especially with the Michigan team that, granted, yes, true freshman quarterback who went out there and played their cupcake and had 200 yards passing, 100 and something yards rushing, and they won 63-3. So they handled business in games they were supposed to, but because that defense was so swarming, it's kind of hard to do that against a defense that's actually considered good. Not saying it is the greatest defense to ever be created. My point is, they handled the business the way they were supposed to in the games the way they were supposed to. Every other team in the conference also had cupcakes. They also had really bad teams that they played. Why didn't do the same thing that Oklahoma did?
It's interesting because, I remember looking on paper coming to the season and going, man, they got a good defensive front from Marvin Jones joining, R. Mason Thomas and Dominic Williams and all these guys. And yet, when I look at their 7 sacks on the season, they've come from other guys. And so what have you seen from that front? Because, again, like all the hype of R. Mason Thomas, preseason, all SEC and all this, and then also the secondary has played really well. I've been told, the freshman Cortland Guillory, I know has been basically shut down, but also no interceptions yet for the secondary.
Yeah, that was kind of the question that we had about Oklahoma going into this season, is what the secondary was going to look like. When you lost Billy Bowman, and last year the secondary was not all the greatest. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't the greatest. You lost Kendall Dolby to injury. And so you were like, all right, we're shuffling in guys that we had transferred in. And so we were trying to hopefully just have a remnants of something good. Eli Bowen emerged as a really good, he was a freshman All-American, emerged as a really good corner, but then he has an ankle procedure and because he had an injury in camp and now he's shelved. So you bring a true freshman in with your corner Gentry Williams, who was really good in 23, but he dealt with a shoulder problem. And you're like, okay, are we going to get something from that? And so far, man, Cortland Guillory wants all the smoke. I was talking to one of our recruiting guys, Colin Kennedy over at 247 Sports and Sooners Illustrated, and he was saying that when they saw Cortland at camps, the one thing he would always do was look for the 5-star wide receiver and say, I want to match up with him. And that's how he would basically tune himself up, that iron sharpens iron mentality for him. And so because of that, he gave problems to Donovan McCulley in that Michigan game, the big receiver for that transferred into Michigan from Indiana. Oklahoma was hardcore after him, but he ended up at Michigan. We wanted him because we could use some additional receivers, but that secondary has shown us, and Peyton Bowen has taken the step from Billy Bowman to be pretty good out there. And so that was good for us. But when you look at that interior, like you said, Armason Thomas is the player that everybody's focused on. Marvin Jones Jr., former 5-star, people are focused on him as well. But that interior, that Dom Williams, especially Jaden Jackson and David Stone, the former 5-star, they have been causing havoc. And so they've kind of, in a way, forced the lines to kind of go into more of a max protect. And that's letting all of the linebackers and the safeties come in and get the hits. Brent Venables liked blitzing safeties. I mean, if you go watch those games last year, Robert Spears-Jennings did a lot of it.
It is interesting, though. This will be a different task when you're talking Eric Singleton Jr., who was a stud at Georgia Tech, Cam Coleman, big stud 5-star receiver a year ago, Horatio Fields, another transfer, Malcolm Simmons. I mean, it gets a little bit more of a test this week with those big-bodied receivers, but you got to think, I guess this Oklahoma secondary is up for the task.
Yeah, and no shade here whatsoever. So please don't take this, Auburn fans. But I asked the question, does Auburn actually throw the ball really? I mean, they're paying wide receivers $1 million a pop, and Jackson Arnold is one of the top running backs in the SEC right now. And like, again, that's no real shade. I'm just asking for real because that seems like that is the philosophy for the offense is if Jackson doesn't see it, just go ahead and run. Now I saw the beautiful pass he threw to Cam Coleman last week against South Alabama. And I'm like, all right, looks like he's got some stuff, but he has 500 yards passing this season so far. And he has probably the best set of wide receivers in the conference, in my personal opinion. Like, there's an argument that can be made because Cam Coleman's ridiculous. I love his game. They're not throwing the ball a lot. And Oklahoma likes that. They're going to force them to chunk the ball. And the question is, how much time will Jackson Arnold have to get rid of that ball? Because we know where his weaknesses are. We know the things that he doesn't like to see. And Brent Venables is going to be prepared with the way his defense is set up to be a pain in his backside.
Yeah, to your point, 69 pass attempts for Jackson Arnold this season, 125 rushing attempts from the backfield for Auburn. Now, part of it is their schedule. Week 1 against Baylor, they chose to run it more than throw it, and then the last 2 weeks against quote unquote cupcakes, they could just run it and they didn't have to throw it. Jeremiah Cobb, by the way, kind of emerging as that good running back with Damari Alston, who's banged up, Darrell Robinson as well. So we'll see what the rushing attack looks like. Coming up next, Jay, we will get into those two quarterbacks and where all the hype and attention will be this weekend. Hey, college football is back, and of course, we are super excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, nothing like it, but let's be real. Actually getting tickets a lot of times can be more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why you got to check out our friends at Game Time. It is the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. You just pull up the Game Time app, and in just a couple of taps, you're going to see some amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25, and the app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before you buy. And honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way you're going to buy tickets. I was just at the LSU game this past week. Super easy to scroll on the Game Time app right before kickoff and see what is still available. So go take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, That is promo code Locked On College for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Locked On SEC rolling along here. We are previewing the SEC game of the week. It is Oklahoma hosting Auburn. Jay Smith, Locked On Sooners, join us. And Jay, let's start with the quarterbacks. Let's start with John Mateer because he has been everything as advertised and then some. There's a reason why his name is sitting there among the tops, the favorites, early favorites for Heisman conversation. It's only been 3 weeks, but what have you seen out of John Mateer and expectations you had for him?
Yeah, coming into this season, I kind of joked with folks that I think he's going to be a Heisman contender. And they're like, oh, really? You think he's just going to just walk into the SEC and do that? And I was like, yeah, I kind of think he does, to be honest. He's doing it. That Michigan defense is actually really good. They're a shell of what they were last year, but they're still very solid. Now, we're going to see if he can do that here in SEC play. The biggest problem you have with him is not only is he a willing thrower, he is a very willing runner. And now what the funny thing is, he doesn't run the ball when in games that don't require him to run. He ran the ball 19 times against Michigan because he felt like that was going to be the best way for us to win that game, him and Ben Arbuckle, in which they've been together for 3 years. I think that's the one thing that a lot of people don't realize with him with that transfer is he's been with the same coach. Like, he was behind Cam Ward at Washington State, and he's watched and understood and knows what he needs to do. And so the way that they work together, they're like, they know each other very well. And so they understand what works and what doesn't. And John Mateer is, like I say, he's a willing thrower. He's a willing passer, a runner. He'll do just about anything to win a game. And so now that we've seen him on the field, he, like you said, he has surpassed most people's expectations. Like, the jokes were that he would be a Heisman contender, and now he legitimately is.
As far as the running backs go for Oklahoma, Torrey Blaylock, we saw hit the 100-yard mark last week. Oklahoma has not had the best performances when it comes to running backs getting over 100 yards. Once or twice last year they had it, but it looks like Torrey Blaylock's kind of emerged as that rusher now.
This year is still a work in progress, mainly because we're still trying to figure out who's going to be that number one. Right now, Torrey Blaylock has emerged as that number one. Jay Knott came in, the transfer from Cal. We thought that he would be able to come out here and really just blow up things in the SEC, but he's been dealing with a nagging shoulder injury, and they've given him a few snaps, and it just haven't looked as good. But Torrey Blaylock walked in and said, I'm a true freshman. I want this job. Give it to me. And he's taken ownership. He's very good with his vision. He cuts well. He finds the hole and go. He doesn't hesitate. He runs downhill every time he touches the ball, and so he's been very impressive. I think the one thing he can improve at probably is just, pass protection. But, we know that comes with time for players that have to learn how to just go out there and hit people instead of being hit. But I think that he's going to be your number one. Xavier Robinson's now getting healthier, so you'll see more of him on the field. Javonte Barnes, the veteran, he'll come out there and give you some good blocking moments as well and catching out of the backfield. And so right now I'm hardcore on the Torrey Blaylock train. I think he's going to be that dude until Jay Knott gets healthy.
So tell us, Jay, what's the vibe with Jackson Arnold coming back home to Norman? It was funny because I saw a lot of it was kind of split the end of last year. I saw some Oklahoma fans saying, good riddance, good luck to you at Auburn. And then I saw some are like, I cannot wait till he comes back to Norman so we can kick his butt. So what's the Sooner fan base feeling right now with Jackson Arnold?
Sports fans are petty. So, of course, vast majority are ready to go out there and boo their little hearts out for this game, in which I understand. He left and, he's no longer a part of the organization. He's a part of the enemies. And so, yeah, we're going to probably give him as many boos as possible. But no, most of the vibe is they're excited to see him and see if he's grown from last year or the last couple of years. Remember, when we were excited about him, we got to watch him in that Arizona game, in the bowl game, and he threw for like 360 yards. Like, he was out there balling, and he just got unlucky with, players fumbling the ball after making catches and those being returned for touchdowns. Just kind of a understanding for some people out there of why people were excited after that Arizona game, even though Oklahoma lost it. Oklahoma was driving and was about to go up 31-13 until that fumble happened and it was returned for a touchdown. And then that's just kind of when you saw things get deflated. And Jackson Arnold at that point was a freshman. So you're like, okay, he's young. He's going to figure it out and he's going to get going. And unfortunately, last season, it did not work out the way we wanted. And we didn't get him out there just flinging it and launching it like we would like. So we'll see. But I know that a lot of fans are ready to boo him. They're ready to see him and see if he's matured and grown. But I know the players are definitely excited to play against him. A lot of them still have love for him. While at the same time, I know that they're ready to go ahead and launch after him, especially if he thinks he's going to run all over us.
As I look at the Oklahoma schedule, Jay, it's hard not to kind of look ahead and say what a win here would do for them. And granted, they're at home. And look, even if it's a close game, just win should be the mentality. But if Oklahoma can win this one, you get Kent State after this, you get a bye week and then Kent State, and then it's that Texas game. And I talked to somebody today, a neutral party. I said, Texas and the way Arch Manning's struggling right now, where would you put that line? They said they would have Oklahoma anywhere from a 6.5 to 9 point favorite right now against Texas based on how both teams have performed to this point. So I say all that to say Oklahoma's going to be sitting pretty going into Red River if they can win this game on Saturday.
If Oklahoma can pull it off, man, you're 100% right. And that's one game that, luckily for us, we won't be looking too far ahead for it because after Auburn, we get a bye week, then Kent State. I think the Kent State game is the one where you'll have the quote-unquote look over. And I'm not concerned about Kent State because I've seen them play. They're not very good this year. They had a new coach, a lot of turnover there, so they're trying to get things re-ramped up. They don't have Sean Lewis out there with that go-go-go offense to really kick your butt. But right now, the focus, luckily, there's going to be a lot of tough games after Kent State, from Texas to South Carolina to Ole Miss, and then you wrap things up in Knoxville. That one is going to be a big challenge after watching Tennessee play against Georgia. They're a legitimate team. They've shown that they can air it out, and their offense is pretty potent. So we got to see what Brent Venables' defense is ready for. But this one will be a huge win. Oklahoma needs to continue the dominance at home because Oklahoma rarely loses at home. That's one thing that they don't do very often, which is very good. So fans always got something good to watch. Last year they lost 2 games, of course, but they do a really good job of not losing at home. And that's something that they plan on continuing with this Auburn game. And so with Oklahoma being like roughly a 5 to 6 point favorite, I think they should be able to cover this spread and do everything they need to do on the defensive side of the ball to make sure that they secure the win.
Yeah, it's such a massive game from a standpoint. You mentioned what's ahead. Yes, Texas, currently a top 10 team, neutral site. But at South Carolina, they just fell out of the top 25, but presuming Lenoris Sellers gets back and he's healthy by that game. And then it's a stretch of Ole Miss top 15, at Tennessee top 15, at Alabama top 15, and you finish it off at home against Mizzou and LSU. And Mizzou currently the top 25 and LSU in the top 5. That is as brutal of a backstretch as you could think of. And so while, it's pretty silly to say this is kind of a must win for Oklahoma, but like you lose this one, man, there could be a spiral of 4 losses down the road. And suddenly this awesome season that's looking like they're set up for could go sideways very quickly. So it feels like they almost need to get this one.
No, you're 100% right there. And for Oklahoma, I say this because, of course, I did the digging and the research on it. The schedule, as hard as it really looks, is a little bit more optimal than people understand. Bear with me here. So this Auburn game, of course, this one isn't the biggest. This one is like perfectly set up for both teams, right? They come off a cupcake game. Oklahoma traveled while Auburn was at home and being able to play quote unquote cupcakes. And so they both should be about as ready as they should be. When they play Texas at Red River, they'll be coming off Kent State, which is, simple good, right? But Texas will be coming back from Gainesville. They'll be playing Florida. Now, granted, both quarterbacks are struggling, so we have zero clue what both quarterbacks are going to be this year. But that game, they come off of a road game against a very tough and physical defense to go against yet another tough and physical defense. And so that one's going to be a challenge right there. South Carolina, as soon as Oklahoma faces them, they'll be coming back from Baton Rouge playing LSU. That's going to be a challenge because it's going to be another physical game followed by another physical game, and then they host Alabama the week after. So that's a 3-game stretch that's pretty darn tough. Same thing when it comes to Tennessee, right? Like a lot of the games, the way they're lined up, Ole Miss plays against Georgia on the road, then they travel to Oklahoma the week after. Back-to-back physical games. And so my kind of point behind all of this is that just about everybody we play, they've got something tough right in front of them. Alabama has LSU the week before they play us. That's going to be a tough physical game. Was it Tennessee? They're sitting with, I have it right in front of me. They have Alabama, then Kentucky, then Oklahoma. So we've got it. I feel like our schedule is a little bit more optimal than people understand, just because of, yes, it's going to be tough for us back to back, but our opposition, they've got the same challenge.
Yeah, no doubt. It's the SEC. It's so funny. Everybody
booing
on Billy Napier in Florida. It's like, look, if they played in the Big 12, they'd be undefeated right now. So it's just
fair point.
That's just how it goes. He is Jay Smith, of course, Locked On Sooners and at Unfair Sports. Check him out there. Jay, always appreciate the time, man.
Gordy, it's always a pleasure. And don't worry, guys, I'm not taking over hosting for Gordy. I'm just here as his substitute. I'm his understudy. Let me be here and learn from greatness. That's all we're trying to do.
Jay, when we got to make a call to the bullpen, Jay is our first guy.
Exactly.
He's
I'm that guy.
Strong reliever, yeah. Jay, we'll do it again soon, man. Thanks for the time.
Thanks much.
All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. And hey, if you're a college football fan, Locked On and Fire TV, they are presenting College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. It's every Thursday, only on Fire TV. Catch Jesse Holley with Gary Patterson and Drake Toll previewing all the biggest games along with our Locked On local experts. Again, catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season on Fire TV. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.